everybody, welcome to the final day of Rivals of Ixalan set reviews here on the Mana Leek. I'm John as always, and today we're going to take a look at the rest of the cards. We're going to take a look at all the gold cards, all the artifact cards, and all the land cards in the set. This of course is a limited set review. Don't get mad if I don't say a card is good and it's actually good in your EDH deck. It's just for limited. Up first, we got ourselves a Planeswalker. We've got Angrath the Flame-Chained. Angrath the Flame-Chained is 3 black-red for a legendary Planeswalker Angrath at Mythic. He starts at 4 loyalty. For +1, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. For -3, gain control of target creature until end of turn. On tap, it gains haste until end of turn. He has a threaten effect. However, there's more. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step if it has converted mana cost 3 or less. -8, each opponent loses life equal to the number of cards in his or her graveyard. So Angrath seems really good. He seems like just exactly what you would want from a black-red Planeswalker. For +1, you get to have your opponent discard a card. Unlike Liliana, you don't have to discard a card and they lose 2 life. Straight upside there. -3, being able to threaten something, and if it's little, also kill it. It's pretty darn good. Not a big fan of threaten effects, but when I can do them again and again and again, totally fine by me. And of course, with the sacrifice outlet, or in this case, built-in sacrifice mode, it's quite decent as well. The -8, you know, it could be a good finisher. I don't think you're exactly building towards it, but if you happen to get Angrath to 8, and this finishes your opponent off, cool. It's a great finisher. It's just all around a good card. It's obviously a first pick, as Planeswalkers very frequently are. And I think Angrath kind of falls into like just the solid A Planeswalker for limited. He's not like some of the bad ones we've seen in recent times. I don't think he's an A+, but he's real good. Solid A for Angrath the Flame-Chained. Up next is Ixalan Seer. Ixalan Seer is 1 green-white for a creature human dryad at uncommon. It's a 2/3. Tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Sacrifice Ixalan Seer, return target dinosaur card from your graveyard to your hand. 3 mana isn't quite where you want your mana dork to come down, but it's fine enough, and it'll certainly help you splash. Getting back the dinosaur that you lost, or I guess maybe milled to your weird milling merfolk dude if you decide to play that card for some weird reason. And, you know, it's a nice later game play to get your dinosaur back, although hopefully you don't need the ramp guy or the splashy ramp guy to play that dinosaur that you just brought back after killing your Birdman. But either way, I really like Ixalan Seer. I like mana dorks, even if they do cost 3 mana, so I've got him at a B-. I would pick him if the pack was real bad first pick, but obviously it falls to like more realistically a 4th, 5th pick. Up next is Azor the Lawbringer. Azor the Lawbringer is 2 white, blue. Yep, you heard me right. 2 white, blue. For a legendary creature Sphinx at Mythic, it is a 6/6. It has flying. When Azor the Lawbringer enters the battlefield, each opponent can't cast instant or sorcery spells during that player's next turn. Whenever Azor attacks, you may pay X white, blue. If you do, you gain X life and you draw X cards. So it's a 6 mana, 6/6 flyer. Sign me up. Absolutely. You would 100% of the time always play that, except it is white, blue. That is not exactly the easiest thing in the world to get. It's not impossible, sure. And it's not even massively difficult. It's something that will hopefully happen in many games by the time turn 6 rolls around. But you do have to be careful there, and it does get knocked down a little bit. 4 specific color pips required is definitely a downside. When it does come into play, the can't cast instants and sorceries effect isn't that great. You know, you maybe stop your opponent for 1 turn from killing Azor with a sorcery speed removal. If it's instant speed removal they're going to cast, you stop them for half a turn? Or if they have the mana, they just snap kill it anyways. Yeah, that's not really, I'm not in on that first ability. The second ability, getting to cast Sphinx's Revelation every single time you attack is very nice, and should just win you the game, because you can cast that for at least 3, assuming you didn't use any treasures or anything to cast Azor. Yeah, that's going to get you right back into the game. So Azor the Lawbringer, it's an interesting card because it is a very restrictive mana cost, but boy, is it worth it. I've got Azor at a solid A. I think you first pick it, and I think you make sure that you dive into white-blue. And yeah, you obviously never splash this card, but in a blue-white deck where you're going to have that mana, solid A. Up next is Deadeye Brawler. Deadeye Brawler is 2 blue-black for a creature human pirate at uncommon. It's a 2/4. It's got Death Touch. It has Ascend. Whenever Deadeye Brawler deals combat damage to a player, if you have the City's Blessing, draw a card. 2/4 Death Touch for 4 is fine by me. It blocks really well. I prefer 1/1s for 1, just because I don't care if a Death Toucher has power. But this has a decent chance to live through its blocks, which is very nice, or more likely just simply dissuade them from happening in the first place. Being able to attack is decent as well, and getting to draw a card when you do have the City's Blessing is totally fine. All in all, you'll always be happy to play this when you're blue-black. I don't quite think you jump into the colors for this, but I am going to keep it at a B-. It does only slightly get up there from the C+ rating, though. So B- for Deadeye Brawler. Up next is Dire Fleet Neckbreaker. Dire Fleet Neckbreaker is 2 black-red for a creature orc pirate at uncommon. It's a 3/2. Attacking pirates you control get +2/+0. So it does count itself. It doesn't say other attacking pirates. It's a 4-mana 3/2, which it's not that great. It does attack like a 5/2, and it does help out the rest of your pirates. Sure, why not? It is, of course, just dying the first time it attacks, though. Again, not the strongest signpost on common. I'm not diving into black-red because I saw this card, but if I'm in black-red already, I'll certainly always play it. This one, I think, does stay at the C+ rating, just shy of a B-. Up next is Elenda. Not Elandra, as I'm going to pronounce her name a billion times. Elenda, the Dusk Rose, is 2 white-black for a legendary creature Vampire Knight at Mythic. She's a 1/1. She has a lifelink. Whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Elenda, the Dark Rose. When Elenda dies, create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is Elenda's power. Elenda feels extremely glass cannon-y. A 1/1 for 4 is real rough, like real rough. It dies to just so many things. You need at least a few other things to die in order for her to get somewhat out of range of just everything. Not sure how I feel about that. Getting some value when she dies is nice enough, but if she dies as a 1/1, you wasted a card in 4 mana. But getting basically any decent value out of this still requires that you do have to have started going off with her, so I don't know. She can be fantastic, but she can also be a 1/1 lifelink that eats a removal spell. Being only 4 mana, though, she's luckily not a huge investment. You're not paying Azor mana for her or anything, so I don't know. I think I'm going to start with her at like a B, but I feel like there's just so much that kills her, and you end up just wasting mana and a card that I don't know. If you can go off with her, awesome. If you don't, it's going to feel real bad. So let's keep her at a B, absolutely no higher. She might actually play lower. Up next is our first double-face card of Rivals of Ixalan, Hadana's Climb. Hadana's Climb is 1 green-blue for a legendary enchantment at rare. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then if that creature has 3 or more +1/+1 counters on it, transform Hadana's Climb. Hadana's Climb becomes the Winged Temple of Orazca, which is a legendary land that taps for 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Pay 1 green-blue and tap it. Target creature you control gains flying and gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is its power. It's not a do-nothing enchantment. That's awesome. You cast this in main phase 1, and it immediately does something in the next phase. That's very cool. Doing something the next couple turns is solid as well, just continuing to put counters on a creature, and then eventually becoming a perfect mana-fixing land that can also boost your merfolk and send them into the air. Hopefully the one that you heavily countered up is just super solid as well. All in all, a solid card. Not exactly first pickable over removal or bombs, but I'm at around a B on this. I think it's very solid. I'll be happy to play this in every merfolk deck I have. Up next is Journey to Eternity. Journey to Eternity is 1 black-green for a legendary enchantment aura at rare. Enchant creature you control. When enchanted creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control. Then return Journey to Eternity to the battlefield transformed under your control. It becomes Adzal, Cave of Eternity, which taps for 1 mana of any color. You can also pay 3 black-green and tap it to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Not a huge fan of these types of auras. If the creature doesn't die, you wasted a card and mana. And that's not where I ever want to be. You'll really need to basically guarantee that this creature is going to die, and I don't know how you do that, because suddenly your opponent doesn't want to use removal on this creature, because then you're just going to get it back, plus you're going to be able to start getting all your creatures back for 5 mana. So I don't know. I don't know how this creature dies, so I'm real iffy on this. The backside of this card I love. I just don't know how commonly I can get the backside of this card. I'm going to start it at like a C+. I'm not super high on this. I don't know how you guarantee that creature's going to die. I just don't know. So I'm going to start low on this at a C+. I'll certainly play it the first time I get my hands on it just to try it, but I think it's going to be a little bit difficult to flip this. Up next is the card that I skipped over because my list was out of order. Huatli Radiant Champion. Huatli Radiant Champion is 2 green white for a legendary planeswalker Huatli. At Mythic, she's a 3 loyalty planeswalker. +1, put a loyalty counter on Huatli Radiant Champion for each creature you control. So she gets 1, and then she gets some number between 0 and presumably infinity. -1, target creature gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. -8, you get an emblem with, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. Huatli's not great. She's not great. Her +1 does nothing other than put more loyalty on her. That's not exciting. -1, target creature getting +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. This is good if you already have a very established board. If you have a very established board, I don't know, this isn't doing that much extra. -8, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. Cool, I guess. Huatli seems weak. Huatli seems really, really, really weak. She, of course, has the Planeswalker tax where your opponent's going to freak out and start attacking her and making weird blocks and weird attacks because, oh no, Planeswalker. And so she has that going for her, so she is probably still just a first pick, but she's a weak first pick. I think she's like a B- at best. I'm not a big fan of this version of Huatli, so B- for Huatli Radiant Champion. Up next for real is Jungle Creeper. Jungle Creeper is 1 black-green for a creature elemental at uncommon. It's a 3/3. Pay 3 black-green, return Jungle Creeper from your graveyard to your hand. Totally fine. It's a 3/3 for 3, which is basically always playable and always pretty decent. Getting it back when you have some mana to spend at the end of your opponent's turn, whatever, sign me up. This is, again, like the rest, a card you'll be solidly happy to have when you're black-green. I won't super push it in ratings just because it is mana intensive. You know, to get it back that first time, you are paying 8 mana, which is a lot. But the fact that it just comes back and back and back and back is pretty decent. I've got it at a B-. I don't think it pushes you into black-green, but when you're there, you'll be happy to have this. Up next is Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca. Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca is 1 green-blue for a legendary creature Merfolk Shaman at Mythic. He's a 2/4. He's got 3 abilities. Tap another untapped Merfolk you control. Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca can't be blocked this turn. Tap 3 untapped Merfolk you control. This one does include him if you want. Draw a card. Tap 5 untapped Merfolk you control. Put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk you control. Kumena is interesting. A 2/4 for 3 is definitely undercosted. It'll block quite well when it's not able to attack. That's great. That's solid. That's a playable card right there. Getting in on blockable could be a nice clock. If you're facing a stall, tap one of your Merfolk, come in with him. 2 damage. Cool. Tapping 3 Merfolk is definitely costly, but drawing a card's quite nice and well worth it. Finally, tapping 5 Merfolk sounds like an insane cost, and a board state that you'll rarely be in where you want to tap those Merfolk and not be attacking. But again, in a board stall, it's going to be amazing. Basically, Kumena is amazing in a board stall. On curve, he's okay. He's fine. Winning, sure, you'll have a 2/4. Sure, that's fine. Any creature's fine that's properly or undercosted when you're ahead and winning. And when you're behind, fine. You've got a 2/4. It can maybe block a creature. As such, I don't think he can be anything higher than a solid B because, well, he is insanely good in that board stall situation. I think he's just fine in all other situations. The value's there, the power's there, but I think the situations where he goes insane is just such a specific one. So I'm at a solid B on Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca. Up next is Legion Lieutenant. Legion Lieutenant is white and a black for a creature vampire knight at uncommon. It's a 2/2. Other vampires you control get +1/+1. Yeah. Extremely powerful card in the vampire deck. A 2-mana Lord is a very, very big game, assuming you're vampires, of course, and a reason to hop into them even if you see this even slightly late. Late being like pick 3 or later. This is a great card. It'll make your vampire deck infinitely better. Solid B. Merfolk Mistbinder is up next. Merfolk Mistbinder is green and a blue for a creature Merfolk Shaman at uncommon. It's a 2/2. Other Merfolk you control get +1/+1. What I just said about that last card, go back, listen to that again, replace the word vampire with Merfolk, B for Merfolk Mistbinder. Path of Metal is up next. Path of Metal is red-white for a legendary enchantment at rare. When Path of Metal enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature that doesn't have First Strike, Double Strike, Vigilance, or Haste. Whenever you attack with at least 2 creatures that have First Strike, Double Strike, Vigilance, and or Haste, transform Path of Metal. Path of Metal becomes Metzali, Tower of Triumph. That's a legendary land that you can tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, just like the rest of them. You can pay 1 and a red and tap it to deal 2 damage to each opponent, or you can pay 2 and a white and tap it to choose a creature at random that attacked this turn and destroy that creature, presumably your opponent's attackers and not your attackers. But you could. I don't think this card's playable. It's an Enrage Enabler, I guess, but I have to attack with 2 creatures with super specific abilities? I don't know about that. If you pull this off, the backside is amazing. I just really don't know. It requires a very explicitly built deck that I'm not even sure you can guarantee will exist in your draft. I'm going to start real low on this. I'm going to start at a D+. I don't think you play this card. This is a bad Enrage Enabler, and then a really good card that you may just never see on the backside. So D+ for Path of Metal. Up next is Profane Procession. Profane Procession is 1 white-black for a legendary enchantment at rare. Pay 3 white-black, exile target creature. Then, if there are 3 or more cards exiled with Profane Procession, transform it. It becomes Tomb of the Dusk Rose. Tomb of the Dusk Rose is a legendary land that you can tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. You can also pay 2 white-black and tap it to put a creature card exiled with this permanent onto the battlefield under your control. I think people are overrating this card a bit. It's good, but 8 mana to exile that first creature is a very real cost. It rapidly comes down in price, rapidly pays for itself though. The back half is also quite nice, getting those creatures back under your control. All in all, I think this is way too mana intensive to be like a snap instant first pick, you've just won the draft kind of card, but I think it's still quite decent, around a B+, maybe even an A-, but the mana you have to put into this is real intensive. So you need a deck built with that in mind. So B+ for Profane Procession. Up next is Protean Raider. Protean Raider is 1 blue-red for a creature shapeshifter pirate at rare. It's a 2/2. It's got raid. If you attacked with a creature this turn, you may have Protean Raider enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. Pretty sure this is just solid. It can't be quite as high as clone just because it's a conditional clone. It can at least be cast if you can't clone anything, if you didn't attack or if there's just nothing to target. You can play it as a 2/2 for 3, which isn't really going to earn this any points. It shouldn't be too hard for you, though, to attack, especially in blue-red, and even attack knowing you're going to just lose whatever you attacked with, knowing that you're then going to play this card and have your very own shiny bomb to match your opponent's shiny bomb. I'd first pick this, but I can't quite tell if I'd pick it over unconditional removal. It's really close. So I'm going to go with like a B+ on this. I think it's really good. It's obviously slightly dependent on your opponent having a good creature, but even if they don't, you can still play this as a 2/2. It's not ideal, but you can. Raging Regisaur is up next. Raging Regisaur is 2 red-green for a creature dinosaur at uncommon. It's a 4/4. Whenever Raging Regisaur attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Good creature is good. It's a 4/4 for 4 that clears out an X1. It trades with X5. It pings your opponent. It enables Enrage. There's just so many options that you can do with this thing. It's a very solid pickup. It is a reason to go into red-green. Probably just shy of first pickable, but I'd bet good money on there being packs that are just terrible enough for this to be a first pick. So I'm at a B+ on Raging Regisaur. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a reason that you go into red-green dinosaurs. Up next is another dinosaur, Relentless Raptor. Relentless Raptor is red-white for a creature dinosaur at uncommon. It's a 3/3. It's got Vigilance. Relentless Raptor attacks or blocks each combat if able. I have to attack while playing red-white. Whatever will I do? This is not a downside. It's not amazing. It is just a vanilla 3/3 basically, and red-white isn't guaranteed to be the mana base that you have on turn 2 every time, so I will not go any higher than a C+ on this. You won't pick this to go into red-white, but if you're already there, you can pick this up pretty happily. Similar to Sky Terror, less good than Sky Terror. Up next is Resplendent Griffin. Resplendent Griffin is 1 white-blue for a creature griffin at uncommon. It's a 2/2. It's got flying. It's got ascend. Whenever Resplendent Griffin attacks, if you have the city's blessing, put a +1/+1 counter on it. 2/2 flyer for 3 is fine. You're not running out of your way for it, but sure. If you hit Ascend, which, boy, people really don't think that's going to happen very often. I'm not saying you're going to have Ascend on turn 3, but I don't think it's beyond reasonable to think that you'll have it on turn 5 or 6 at least sometimes. But anyways, this can just grow and deal more and more damage. It does, however, grow really slowly. It's only getting +1/+1 a turn, and it won't start growing until later in the game. As such, I think this is relatively a vanilla 2/2 flyer that sometimes can do something else. So I'm going to put it at a C+. I don't think you go into blue-white for this card. Up next is Siegehorn Ceratops. Siegehorn Ceratops is green-white for a creature dinosaur at rare. It's a 2/2. It's got Enrage. Whenever Siegehorn Ceratops is dealt damage, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. I don't know about this dinosaur. It's a 2/2 for 2. Sure, fine, cool. If it's dealt 1 damage specifically, it becomes a 4/4, and then it becomes terrifying and obnoxious. But how often is this thing going to be hit for exactly 1 damage only? In green-white, where you lose a lot of those decent red Enrage enablers. I think this card's secretly just bad. I'll pass it a lot, keep it around like a C+, just because it is a 2/2 for 2 that can, you know, if that one time happens, it can start to get really out of control. But boy, I don't know how often that one time's going to happen. So C+ for Siegehorn Ceratops. Up next is Stormfleet Sprinter. Stormfleet Sprinter is 1 blue-red for a creature human pirate at uncommon. She's a 2/2 with haste. Stormfleet Sprinter cannot be blocked. Oh, well, we're aggro. We are an aggro set. It's a hasty, unblockable 2/2. It's going to be real damn annoying, but I do think there's decent removal in the set. But you best have it in hand or top deck it soon. This is just a decent aggressive creature. It's not really a bomb or an insanely high pick, but it is quite good. So B-, but it is picked kind of like a C+. So B- for Stormfleet Sprinter. Up next is our final of the gold double-faced cards, Storm the Vault. Storm the Vault is 2 blue-red for a legendary enchantment at rare. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a colorless treasure artifact token. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 5 or more artifacts, transform Storm the Vault. Storm the Vault becomes Vault of Catlacan. Vault of Catlacan is a legendary land that you can tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, just like the rest. You can also tap to add blue to your mana pool for each artifact you control. I don't really want to play this. It's 4 mana to maybe, hopefully, get some treasures at some point. Not really sold on that. And flipping this to ramp me in blue, if I have a bunch of artifacts, just also no. I'm not playing this card. I think it's around a D+. I don't think it's playable at all. D+ for Storm the Vault. Our final gold card, we're going to do artifacts and lands after this, is Zakama, Primal Calamity. Zakama is a 6 red-green-white legendary creature, Elder Dinosaur Mythic. It's a 9/9 with Vigilance, Reach, and Trample, 1 ability for each head. When Zakama Primal Calamity enters the battlefield, if you cast it, if you didn't cheat it in somehow, untap all lands you control. So, Zakama is free, assuming you had 9 mana at the start anyways. Pay 2 in a red, Zakama deals 3 damage to target creature. Pay 2 in a green, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Pay 2 in a white, you gain 3 life. One of these is not like the other. Yeah, Zakama is super cool, but let's be real here. You're not casting this in a large number of games. 9 mana is a really big ask. Having all 3 colors is a decent ask. If you do cast it, it is technically free. But you gotta cast it in the first place. And if you do cast it, you probably shouldn't lose. You've got a 9/9 Vigilance Reach Trample that can, you know, ping your opponent, well, quote unquote, ping your opponent for 3 mana. You can naturalize anything that's in your way, artifact or enchantment wise. If you need some life, you can do that too. If you had, you know, perfect 3/3/3 mana when you cast this, you could do all of these things 3 times after casting it. You could deal 9 damage, you could gain 9 life. Yeah, if you cast this, you should win. But can you cast it? I think you can't. I don't think you can cast this very reliably at all. Realistically, I'm going to pick this every time I see it. And I'm going to try every time I see it. But, you know, in a competitive sense, I don't think you should really try to go deep on this. I've got it at like a B- in my heart. Realistically, it might be unpickable. So B- for Zakama in my heart. Alright, with the multicolored cards out of the way, all we have left is artifacts. There's not that many, and just a couple of lands to talk about. Up first, in the artifacts, we have Awakened Amalgam. Awakened Amalgam is 4 generic mana for an artifact creature golem at rare. It's a star, because Awakened Amalgam's power and toughness are each equal to the number of differently named lands you control. So in other words, typically 2. This is a 2/2 for 4. A lot of the time. Maybe it's a 3/3, but pretty unlikely. Unplayable Unlimited, another rare to just feel sad over. This is just a straight F. Up next, we don't just have multicolored double-faced cards. We do have a couple of artifacts. We've got Azor's Gateway. Azor's Gateway is 2 generic mana for a legendary artifact at Mythic. Pay 1, tap it, draw a card, then exile a card from your hand. So, kind of loot. If cards with 5 or more different converted mana costs are exiled with Azor's Gateway, you gain 5 life, on tap Azor's Gateway, and transform it into Sanctum of the Sun. Sanctum of the Sun taps to add X mana of any one color to your mana pool, where X is your life total. How does 20 mana sound to you? How does 40 mana sound to you in Commander? Yeah, this is janky. Real janky. Boy, I don't know. We had issues with Impending Doom. It was really difficult to play a 1 mana spell, then a 2 mana spell, then a 3 mana spell. Here, you don't have to play them in order. You don't have to exile a 1 mana, then a 2 mana. You can exile a 5, and then a 1, and then a 12. Or I guess, yeah, Galt is a 12 mana spell, right? 10 green. Let's say she was. But you don't get to cast the spell. At least with Impending Doom, I could, play a shock, deal 2 damage to you, and also put a counter on Impending Doom, so you lose the ability of the card. You don't get to actually play it. You do get to draw cards, so that's cool. We're looting, except this card really asks us to loot away real cards and not lands. Now, the first land that you do throw away will count because a land has a CMC of 0. It doesn't have a casting cost, but that means its CMC is 0. So at least there's one card that'll get you there. But I don't know. I don't know that you're reliably untapping with this, transforming this. And if you do, it's going to be late enough in the game that I don't really feel like 20 mana or 15 mana or 10 mana or however much life you have left after throwing away a bunch of cards is really going to do for you. So I don't think this card's really playable and limited. I've got it at it might be playable on the front half. Even if you are just using this as a looter, like a looter on a stick, a looter rock, if you will, it may be fine. So I don't know. I think I can go on a C+ on this, actually, just using this as a loot effect. But I don't know. It's real slow. I don't expect to ever flip this. And even if I do, I don't know what I'd do with it. So I'm at a C+ on Azor's Gateway. It's cool. It's got a lot of applications in other places, but not so much in limited. Up next is Captain's Hook. Captain's Hook is 3 generic mana for an artifact equipment at rare. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, has menace, and is a pirate. In addition to its other creature types, whenever Captain's Hook becomes unattached from a permanent, destroy that permanent. When you put this on, it's for life. Equip for a single generic mana. This is decent. Menace and +2/+0 plus the pirate thing is nice. It's probably just better than Pirate's Cutlass. It's only 1 mana to equip it, so that makes up for losing the instant speed auto-equip that the Cutlass had the first time. It doesn't get the +1 toughness, but it does get the menace, so I think ultimately it is just sort of similar to Pirate's Cutlass. Not being able to move it is definitely a very real downside. I personally moved my Cutlass around a ton in Ixalan. Attack, throw it on a blocker, attack, throw it on a blocker. Still, I think this is a solid equipment around the C+ range, but never ever really a first pick. Unfortunate for a rare, but C+. Up next is Gleaming Barrier. Gleaming Barrier is 2 generic mana for an artifact creature wall at common. It's an 0/4 defender. When Gleaming Barrier dies, create a colorless treasure artifact token. Only if you really need to reach the late game should you play this. Maybe a little bit more often in sealed, but not often. Getting the treasure may be nice, bit of, ramp or fixing, but still, this is just pretty far out from playable in a lot of situations. I've got it at a D+. It goes in the super controlling decks if you really need it. Maybe a little bit more often in sealed, but D+ for Gleaming Barrier. Our final double-face card is Golden Guardian. Golden Guardian is 4 generic mana for an artifact creature golem at rare. It's a 4/4. It's got defender. Pay 2, Golden Guardian fights another target creature you control. When Golden Guardian dies this turn, return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. So note, you have to pay 2. You have to fight one of your creatures. Then if Golden Guardian dies in that fight or later in the turn or whenever, it comes back transformed. If it just dies and you didn't activate it, it doesn't ever come back. What is it coming back as? Well, it comes back as Goldforge Garrison. You can tap it to add 2 mana of any color to your mana pool. Pretty cool. Or pay 4 and tap it to create a 4/4 colorless Golem artifact creature token. So you get to start pumping out 4/4s. This is definitely interesting. I'm not quite sure where to put it. It's a 4/4 for 4. That's cool, but it's got Defender. You're never attacking with this creature. It's just a blocker. And I don't know if that's how I want to be spending my 4 mana. I get to pay 2 to fight one of my other creatures, which is going to kill a lot of creatures in this format. I guess if your dinosaurs, this can hit it and nothing will happen, and maybe you get an enrage trigger. But this kills a lot of things that it fights. To find something that kills it in the fight so that you actually get to transform it seems a little risky. So I think the kind of general way that you'll transform this is your opponent's attacking in and you're trading or you're chump blocking or something, and then at instant speed you make this kind of fight as it's dying. But I don't know. This all feels janky to me. Very, very janky. I've got this at like a C+. I think it's fine enough, but I'm really gonna have to play with it because I don't know. I could see, the value in it. I can see, yeah, you can do some cool things like Enrage, or maybe you throw your Journey to Eternity on a creature, and then you use this to kill that, and then you get the Journey back, and the creature back, and this back. But I don't know. C+ for now. I have to play with this card to really understand it. It could be like a B+, it could be like an A-, it could be like an F. I'm not entirely sure. We're going to start at a C+. Up next is the Immortal Sun. The Immortal Sun is 6 generic mana for a legendary artifact at Mythic. Players can't activate Planeswalker's loyalty abilities. Nobody. Not you. Not your opponent. Nobody. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Creatures you control get +1/+1. And that's the end of random abilities that you get. 6 mana is a lot, but this is probably just worth it. The first line's meaningless, of course. Could potentially hurt you if you are a luck sack and open multiple mythics. The second line's nice. Asymmetrical Howling Mine is very solid. All spells costing 1 less to cast is great. And an Anthem is fantastic too, especially one that's non-conditional. We've seen a couple of Anthems that are conditional, only hitting some of your creatures. This is just great. All of this is good. The 6 mana does make me slightly iffy, but I think this is still a solid B+. Similar to Vanquisher's Banner, there's just some games where it's going to be too slow, so I won't go any higher, but B+ for Immortal Sun. Up next is Orazca Relic. Orazca Relic is 3 generic mana for an artifact at common. It has Ascend. Tap to add colorless to your mana pool, or tap and sacrifice it. You gain 3 life and draw a card. Activate this ability only if you have the City's Blessing. I'm not really in the market for a 3 mana colorless rock, and one that I can only conditionally sacrifice if I do have Ascend already, and I get 3 life attached to it, yay. None of this really draws me in. I don't think you want this. There's way better things to ramp with for the decks that want ramp, and doesn't fix your mana, so not sold on it. C- for Orazca Relic. Up next is Silent Gravestone. Silent Gravestone is 1 generic mana for an artifact at rare. Why is it at rare? Cards in graveyards can't be the targets of spells or abilities. Pay 4, tap it, exile Silent Gravestone, and all cards from all graveyards draw a card. This is bad. This is really bad. This is unfortunate that it's a rare. You're just going to cry over your pack when you open this and then have to look at the uncommons and hope there's something good there. Maybe there's a Ravenous Chupacabra and everything's fine. Yeah, this card has almost 0 reason to ever side it in and literal 0 reason to ever main deck it. Don't pick it. Don't play it. Pass it. D-. Our second last card is Strider Harness. Strider Harness is 3 generic mana for an artifact equipment at common. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. Equip for 1 generic mana. I'm not a big fan of Strider Harness. I wasn't the last time we saw it, and I'm not this time. +1/+1 is just so weak for equipment, and haste doesn't really do much for me. Some people will play this a bit higher, probably around like a C-, but for me it's just a D. If I play this, I'm going to feel real bad. D for Strider Harness. Our final artifact card we still have a couple of lands to talk about, is Traveler's Amulet. Traveler's Amulet is 1 generic mana for an artifact at common. Pay 1, sacrifice Traveler's Amulet, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Good old Traveler's Amulet. I like it. If you're splashing, you want this badly, and you'll be very happy to see it come around. You'll pick it highly the second you know you're going to splash. If you're not, it's vaguely playable, but not overly. It does thin your deck slightly, and I do sometimes play these in 2-color decks just to, you know, be another land and get one out of the deck. Sort of a C- all around, really, for Traveler's Amulet. Off to the lands, we've got 2, and then we've got a cycle. Arch of Orazga is our first one, and our rare one. Arch of Orazga is a rare land that has Ascend. Tap, add colorless to your mana pool. Pay 5, tap it, draw a card. Activate this ability only if you have the City's Blessing. This is pretty mediocre. I don't have any reason to hurt my mana base by putting a colorless land into my deck in this format. And if I do get the City's Blessing, being able to pay 5 and draw a card is cool. But I don't know that I want to waste a land slot on this. I'm not super sold on this. I could maybe see it being like a C+ in a deck that's definitely going to go late, definitely going to hit that City's Blessing. But I think C+ is about as high as I can go for Arch of Orazga. Our other non-cycle land is Evolving Wilds. Evolving Wilds is a land at common. Tap it, sacrifice Evolving Wilds, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Evolving Wilds is back, just like Traveler's Amulet. You will love to have it if you're splashing, and if you are playing a 2-color deck, you may even play it anyways. Important note that Brainstorm Merfolk is in here, and brainstorming with an Evolving Wilds is a really good idea. You put those 2 cards you really don't want back on top, crack your land, shuffle it away. You've got 2 new cards, hopefully, on top of your deck. Evolving Wilds is fine. It's just a C. As good as it is in that splash deck, as okay as it is in a 2-color deck, it is just a C. Our final cards for the set are a cycle of lands that we saw originally in, I want to say, Shadows over Innistrad. Pretty sure it was Shadows. These are the 5 tapped lands that are at uncommon. So Forsaken Sanctuary, Foul Orchard, Highland Lake, Stone Quarry, and Woodland Stream. They are all uncommon. They all enter the battlefield tapped, and they all tap for 1 color of their combination: black-white, black-green, blue-red, red-white, and green-blue. These are fine. If you're in these colors, you'll be very happy to have one. If you're not, you won't play this. You won't play this off color. Tapped lands are a real cost. Yeah, they're fine. If you're splashing, you might even play it slightly higher. It's middle of the road C, though. Nothing really else to say about those. So that's going to wrap it up for the Rivals of Ixalan set review in its entirety. I'm looking forward to this set. I know a number of people aren't. A lot of people, of course, got really tired and really worn out on Ixalan. I was perhaps infamously known for really enjoying Ixalan. It's definitely in my top 10 favorite formats. Not top 5, but top 10. I really enjoyed it. And this set looks like it's got a bunch of enjoyable stuff as well. It does look like it might be a little bit speedy, but there is a lot of removal. So I'm hoping that we do get to block, but there is a bunch of stuff that does encourage not blocking, as we've seen, like things that just literally have unblockable, a multitude of them. Anyways, I'm looking forward to this. Let me know what you think of the set. What cards are you looking forward to? Are you going to a pre-release? Let me know. Whatever you want to let me know down in the comments below. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me on Twitter at @TheManaLeek. That's L-E-E-K, like the vegetable, not the card. You can also find me at Facebook.com/TheManaLeek, Twitch.tv/TheManaLeek, and Patreon.com/TheManaLeek. If you like the content, click that thumbs up button. Click subscribe if you want to see more. And if you do have questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, see y'all next time.